Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Purpose People podcast. I'm delighted to bring on Kaddy Thomas from Elijah's Hope and many other things, but we'll find those out as we go on. But welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Darren.
Better than Zoom, do you think, being sat here in front of a microphone?
Yeah, it's more personal, isn't it? Face to face.
Kaddy, you strike me as someone that, you sent your bio across, and you strike me as someone that, despite life and challenges that have been thrown your way, you're probably one of the most happiest, funniest, zest for life people that I've met on the whole networking world. How do you do it?
You make a decision as to. When I say you make a decision, it's an interesting. I think it is down to decision and attitude. I think.
Yeah.
You can get up in the morning and go, I'm really depressed and I'm going to moan about everything today. Or you can get up and go, it's Monday morning and I'm going on a podcast. Let's go. I've been really excited about the fact that, life is, I think you have to enjoy every moment that we've got breath in us because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's about making the most of today.
Yeah, and I think you absolutely personify that journey of making the most of every single moment. So obviously without wanting to go too deep, but we can go as deep as you want. Do you want to just tell a little bit about your story? Obviously there's so much to unpack from seeing it. So where do you want to start? What would be the best place to start? I know Winnie the Pooh said start at the beginning, but what about you? Where do you want to start?
So I was born in Birmingham. True Brummie. Brummie twang comes out every now and again.
All right.
And I was born in 1968 to a mother who was only 22 at the time. Obviously, I'm a British UK citizen, but my family heritage is the Gambia, West Africa. And I think my mum, obviously, she gave birth to me. She could see that I had physical disabilities, but at the time she was also told that I was going to be severely mentally retarded. It's the word that they used 55 years ago.
Wow.
Now the terminology would be severe learning disabilities. And I think as a result of that, and I guess I didn't realise this until I became a mother, but I think being a 22-year-old, 22 is still quite young to be having a child, I think. And I think the thought of bringing up a child with physical disabilities, and at the time was told that I was going to be severely retarded, was too much for her to bear. So at the age of 1, she up sticks and abandoned me. And because of the label that I was given, I spent 2 years in a hospital for children of the same, children with disabilities. And then I moved to a residential children's home for children, again, with profound learning disabilities. And obviously, as I was growing up, the matron, Beryl, funnily enough, was like, I don't think this child I don't think mentally there's anything wrong with this young lady. So she contacted Birmingham Social Services because the residential children's home that I was in was outside of Birmingham. So she contacted Birmingham Social Services and said, this child needs to get out of here and be the ward of your care. So I then moved to a place called Erdington into a residential children's home. But Sunfield Children's Home was the norm for me because that's where I spent 6 years of my life. So I think that whole kind of readjusted to, being around well children, to the children that I was used to, was a bit of a juggling act, I would say. The plan was that I would be adopted. That fell through because, unfortunately, my soon-to-be adopted mother was involved in a car accident, so that kind of killed that.
Wow.
Then I was fostered. That came to abrupt end 2 years down the line because the father sexually abused me. And then I moved back into, well, actually, no, I didn't move straight back into residential care. I moved into a kind of temporary foster home. And as you can see, I'm black, but culturally I'm quite white.
Yeah.
So suddenly being thrust into a black foster family just completely freaked me out, because I wasn't used to being around black people at that time. And also, I was just kind of, I just kind of shared the fact that I'd been physically abused for a good year. So, the emotional kind of fallout from all of that was still very much there. So that lasted about 3 weeks. They were a beautiful, wonderful family, but I it was just too much for me emotionally to kind of even cope with or comprehend. So I then moved back into residential care. At the age of 16, well, actually, I'm still headstrong now at 55. So when I think about how I was when I was 16. So when I was 16, I was like, oh, I'm ready for independence. So I moved into a kind of hostel that kind of what I say is, I'm not sure if they taught me independent skills or whether I was like, I know it all, I don't need to be taught. So at 17, at the time I was working at a youth training scheme.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be a cook, because I love food.
What's your speciality dish?
I don't like cooking it. I love eating it. No, I can cook, and I like anything from chicken, beef, steak, pork, lamb, the whole range, a la carte,
You're not a vegan then, no?
No, not at all. So yeah, at the age of 17, I declared myself homeless, but I wasn't homeless. I was still living in a hostel, but I wanted to get out of the hostel because I thought I was ready for independence. Moved into a council flat, 4th floor, part of a high rise, and then spent 12 months basically kind of not making great choices. Let's just leave it at that. After a year of being in a council flat, I got evicted because I thought it was a good idea to throw a fireplace over the balcony. Not a great idea at all. So I got evicted from the council flat and then moved into a property, a shared house, where I guess you could say I found my purpose.
Okay, interesting.
I thought that was nicely... Anyway, so I moved into a shared house which was owned by a charity called TOC-H, and TOC-H were about, conservation, doing kind of day schemes, taking children on holiday. And in fact, whilst I was living in this shared house, I raised funds and took the children from the residential children's home that I used to live in away on a week's outdoor-bound activities holiday up in Scotland.
Yeah.
So that was brilliant, although I think it had its challenges because suddenly staff were having to listen to me as a leader of this holiday, and I think they struggled with that. Anyway, so I lived there for a couple of years, then I moved out of there, moved into another shared house, and then thought it would be a good idea to steal somebody's identification to try and get a loan. Not such a good idea.
Oh, wow, okay.
So as a result of doing that, I got arrested, and as you could imagine, the owner of the property that I was living in certainly did not want me back. So I spent a night in a police cell, which was quite an experience, and I would never want to go there again.
Good.
And then, obviously, went to court. As a result of having no fixed abode, I then lived in a bail hostel. Court hearing came up. Thankfully, they didn't chuck me into prison. They gave me I can't even remember now, maybe it was a 12. It was either a 12 or 2-year probation order.
Yeah.
I then moved into another hostel. And it was in town. This hostel was run by the Girls Friendly Society, and it was there that I met Jesus. And it was interesting because I could never get my head around it. Am I allowed to say sex? I could never get my head around, as a Christian, you're not supposed to have sex outside of marriage. Anyway, I think I embraced Christianity. I would say I'm still a born-again Christian now, but I haven't been to church for quite a few years.
Yeah.
So whilst I was living at Townsend Gardens, I worked at a Quaker college, kind of explored Quakerism for a little while, but a bit too quiet for my likings. I think finding Jesus, he did a number on me in terms of just healing me from all the hurt. Being brought up in residential care, you get fed, you have a roof over your head, you've got clothes on your back, but what it doesn't give you is that love and security that we all long for.
Yeah.
So becoming a Christian, it was kind of like, I can love everybody and everybody can love me.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite work like that. But I think finding Jesus and having Jesus in my life really gave me a sense of security, because prior to that I was really insecure. So I would be really I wouldn't verbally say to people, love me, you got to love me, you got to love me, you got to love me. But I think how I behaved and how I acted, it kind of scared people, because obviously when you become friends with somebody, it has to kind of evolve naturally.
Yeah.
And at a pace that both parties are comfortable with. Well, I was quite a demanding woman or young person. But finding Jesus really kind of made me whole. And I know that I'm loved, and I know that I'm secure in his love, and I know that I don't need to strive anymore for friendships or relationships, but that they will and do happen naturally and over a period of time. What Jesus also has done for me is heal me from all the rejection from my mother, and rejection from being rejected from individuals as I was growing up. Being healed from the whole sexual abuse trauma and the footprint that left in my life. And so, yeah.
Incredible story, because for me, what I find is that having met you, because I'm obviously joining you a much later part of your life, and to see the way that you go into networking scenarios, your openness, your friendliness and stuff like that. You obviously, we can talk about the disability and things afterwards, but you come across as very confident, and you're very clear on what you want out of life. And most people would say they wouldn't be able to do that having gone through all the stuff that you've gone through. And for me, that's a real testimony to seeing you embrace something that allows you to heal, allows you to become whole, allows you to be able to be an expression. And for me, it's that sense you're a walking miracle, because you've had enough on your plate for you to cancel. Do you know what I mean? Hey, I'm done with this. I'm out of this life. And yet, having now got to know you and meet you and stuff like this, the world's a much richer place for you being in it. Mm-hmm. And inspires people to say, well, hang on a minute, Kaddy's doing this, why can't I? Because what you do is you remove the excuses just by being who you are. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've seen in the short time that we've got to know each other, and and being and seeing you in that networking scene and seeing that confidence and that clarity. So obviously, the condition that you have, what is it? What's the term of it, and how does it come about? Just to give some people some understanding.
So you'll have to look it up on the website, because I'm going to give you the layman's terms.
That's what we need.
So basically, Apert syndrome is a genetic syndrome which affects the way that the bones grow together.
Right.
So often, in people with Aperts, we have misshaped skulls because the platelets don't fuse properly.
Yeah.
And we also have fused hands and feet. So when I was born, in fact, when my son was born too, our hands are like mittens, I guess, is the way. And often we'll have fused toes as well. Because of the way the skull develops, often our eye sockets are shallow, so we have protruding eyes. Our airways are really narrow, so often I'll have a runny, snotty nose. In fact, I'm conscious that I might need to not blow my nose, but wipe my nose a little bit. But that's just part of the condition. And there are other side effects, but it affects one in 65,000 births. That's how.
One in 65,000.
So that is APAT syndrome.
So obviously, you said you found Jesus. You are finding some healing and some, hope through the situations that you find yourself in. What came first? Because was it the career that you're currently in, or was it you being a mother and then finding the career afterwards? How did that all happen? There you go, Kaddy.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. See, I always wanted to be a cook.
Yeah.
So I did my youth training scheme as a, in a cooking scenario. I did a youth training scheme which essentially was catering cooking. My placement was a hospital kitchen. Not that I did much cooking. I did more pot washing than cooking.
Yeah.
Then I worked at a Quaker college for a period of time. That was cooking. That was meat and vegan and vegetarian. Then I left that. Then what did I do then? I think I was unemployed for a couple of years. Then I did tempering work. But because I wasn't qualified cook, chef, a lot of my temping work was pot washing or being a dinner lady. And then I decided to go to college to become a qualified chef, but ended up being in the restaurants and loved talking to people and building rapport and serving people. In fact, went into the kitchens, hated the kitchens, chef bawling and screaming and swearing at you. I was like, I've got to get out of there. So I lasted 2 days in there, became a qualified waitress, but then went and worked for a charity called St Basil's, which is a homeless charity in Birmingham, and became a support worker. And in fact, I remember my first shadow shift thinking, I've arrived, this is what I've been looking for. And so I worked for St Basil's for 10 years. 5 years as a support worker, working directly with homeless young people.
Yeah.
And then a young person that I'd built a really good working relationship with, suddenly was found dead one day, and that completely shattered me. And I just thought, I suppose, I went through a grieving process, but the organisation were a little bit like, well, this kind of goes with the territory. Yeah. And I went, well, it might go with the territory, but emotionally I'm flawed. This has just completely floored me. And it wasn't like he was, he had some kind of condition that we knew he was going to go. He just one day walked into work and they told me this young person is no longer.
Wow.
So I kind of took some time. I went off sick, and then came back into the same hostel, and then just said to them, I can't do it. So I moved around other hostels within the organisation, but kind of came to that place where I just thought, I can't give to young people if I'm feeling broken and empty myself.
Yeah.
So I said, I don't want to leave. Obviously, it was a full-time job. I said, I don't want to leave, but I can't do.
You just needed time.
I can't do project. I can't do direct work with young people anymore. So I moved into the head office became a receptionist. Used to get told off for talking. Can you believe that?
No, you're very quiet, Kaddy, generally.
Yeah, I used to get told. I used to answer.
I was worried, actually, that you wouldn't have anything to talk about on the podcast.
Used to pick up the phone, and if it was somebody I knew, I'd be like, "Oh, hello, hello, good morning, St. Basil's. Kaddy speaking. How may I help you?" And if it was somebody I know, I'd go, "Oh, how you doing? What's going on in your life?" And my boss used to sit next to me, going, "Kaddy, will you just signpost them to where they want to go?" Instead of gas bagging.
That's a machine to do that, isn't it? You know, it's like, I think that's one thing I've learned about you. You do like speaking to people and connecting with people, and the rapport side of things is that's a gift in itself. You create rapport very quickly with people. You know?
Absolutely, yeah.
So they're trying to stop your gift, but you found the role for your gifting. So you've been a receptionist, and then, you know, you've obviously experienced this trauma of someone actually dying that you work quite closely with and whatever. Now, knowing your end game where you are now, which is caring for carers, how did that happen? How did that happen?
So, I met the father of my child through work, and we had a baby. I laugh. I shouldn't laugh, really, but it's funny now. Not funny, not so funny at the time, because as a born-again Christian, not supposed to have sex outside of marriage, but I did, and I enjoyed it, and as a result of having regular sex, a baby came about.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't go down very well with the church that I was attending at the time. Mm-hmm. I was kind of like, well, you know, maybe the circumstances of this conception are not great, but I'm not going to walk around like a miserable person because I've now with child. Yeah. So I was really happy and ecstatic and over the moon about having a baby. So I had Elijah, who was born with the same condition as I, Apert syndrome. He had a cleft of the soft palate and a heart murmur. And then basically he had surgery on his skull. The surgery was to expand his skull because it was sitting quite tightly around his brain. The surgery was a success. However, basically, you know, when we have a foreign object inserted into our bodies, it's a gateway for infection. So it became infected, treated with antibiotics. Then these metal rods were removed from his skull. His head leaked cerebral fluid for a period of 2 weeks. The hospital that we were part of at the time ignored me basically for 2 whole weeks. And as a result, he became catastrophically brain damaged, which obviously turned our lives upside down. I would say that for the first 3 months of Elijah being... So he went from a toddler who was eating orally, loved his food like his mother, loved not chatting like I'm talking, but, he was babbling and, climbing up furniture and used to, loved music, still loves music, funnily enough, 17 years on. So he used to sit in his high chair swaying to music, so suddenly having a child motionless, literally motionless. And I'm a single parent. The father of my child, well, let's just leave that there. But he wasn't around. Obviously, I don't have natural biological family. The church, because I had a child at wedlock, they weren't overly supportive either. So I was on my own, basically. So for 3 months, I was kind of looked at my child and didn't recognise him. Anyway, New Year's Eve, December 2007, I was talking to his neurosurgeon consultant, and I just said to him, I would not want to relive the last 3 months, but it's New Year's Eve. We're coming into a new year, and I've got to fix my boy, or fix him as much as he is going to be fixed. Mm. So, 2nd of January 2008, I had this old reconditioned Dell laptop. So the 10 months that we spent in hospital it served me well, because I then became a research, dare I use the word, junkie. And I just went on the internet, spent hours on the internet just researching what was out there to rehabilitate Elijah. So we spent 10 months Birmingham Children's Hospital. So from the October right through to the August 2008, we spent in there. Then we moved down to a place called the Children's Trust, which is in Surrey, which is a brain injury rehabilitation centre.
Yeah.
Moved there from the August 2008 to the November 2009. He probably spent half of that time in hospital because his health was really unstable. And then we didn't want to move back to Birmingham because, let's just say that they're responsible for the fact that Elijah's brain injured, so I didn't want to move back to Birmingham. Mm-hmm. Some good friends of mine were just about to start a new church, or come down to start a pastoralship at E5 in Bristol.
Okay. Went
to their induction service and felt, well, in fact, as I was driving into Bristol, I was a bit like, because as you can imagine, your child suddenly becoming brain injured as a result of negligence, essentially.
Yeah.
Very angry, very bitter, very emotionally traumatised by the whole situation. So when I drove into Bristol, I was a bit like, yeah, all right. Went to church, yeah, all right. But God very much said to me, this is where I want you. And I was, yeah, all right.
And then as a result of that, did you feel that you had the backing of the church to help you through this situation, or did you still feel alone? How did that?
No, I then I moved to Bristol. We moved to Portishead, and I went to church. And even through my time at E5, and I was there for, I can't think how many years I was there for, good 6-7 years. God continued that healing journey of what had just happened to us. So very loved and supported by the church, and we love going, Yes. So kind of where we are now, I guess you could always say that I've always been career-minded. Yeah. Even when I had Elijah, I went back to work. When he was 9 months old, I went back to work. So in 2013, North Somerset, I made a decision. It wasn't a good decision. Basically, Elijah wasn't great health-wise. GP told us to take him to hospital. I took him to a therapy appointment in Surrey. As a result of me ignoring GP advice, social services came down on me like a ton of bricks, took me through this whole court drama in 2013. And as a result of that, I thought I need to set up an organisation to support carers. Because when carers are being persecuted, and I use the word persecuted because, yes, it warranted a conversation, absolutely, and it warranted a, Kaddy, next time, what are you going to do? Absolutely. But did it warrant a 12-month, we want to remove your child from your care? Yeah. No, it didn't. Anyway, as a result of going through that whole journey of 2013, I thought I need to set up an organisation to support carers. So Elijah's Hope, and I wanted the company to be named after my son. So I called it Elijah's Hope.
And now you care for carers, people going through similar things and stuff like that. And from what I understand, is that you've managed to create a community, a whole load of people that you're supporting and helping on the difficult journey. But it's like you've taken a story and you've turned that story to good. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because for most people, I think that would destroy a lot of people. Just the whole thing from, children, just the whole thing is just like mind-boggling how you are still as you are, the sense of humour that you have. And now you've got this organisation that cares for the carers. So just explain to us with Elijah's Hope, because I know you work with the community of people, how you support them, and what is it? Is it like a monthly meet? Because there's going to be people here that have got difficult situations in the Purpose People community that might be saying, you know what, I don't know where to start. I'm trying to make this work by myself. I feel not being supported. I'm a full-time carer, for example. How do you support people doing what you're doing?
So coaching, I'm a real big advocate for coaching. So what we do in our 6 week, so we run 6 weekly coaching sessions, and what we take carers through is what's been good. So there's the intellectual brain, and then there's the primitive brain. When we're in our intellectual brain, I always have to think about this. It's that didn't work out for me. Oh, that's not going well for me. Oh, it's a miserable day, isn't it? That's when we're in our primitive brain. When we're in our intellectual brain, oh, wow, I'm in this gorgeous, wonderful barn, surrounded by wonderful people, and I feel on fire and positive, and, life is great at the moment. So what we take carers through, who are often feeling frustrated, burnt out, overwhelmed, battle-weary, is we take them through a 6-week process where we go, what's been good? Because when we ask somebody what's been good, even if we're not having a great time, we have to, our brain has to kick into, okay, there must be something that's been good out today.
Yeah.
Then we go through a bit of brain education. So we're educating carers about how our brain functions. Then we ask the miracle question, which is, how happy are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
So I had a one-to-one coaching with Kerry, who runs my groups for me last week, because my stress bucket was full to overflowing. And so she asked me that question, how happy are you? And I went, 5. So she then said, so what do you need to do? What needs to happen? Or what do you need to do to change that number from a 5 to a 6?
Yeah.
So I went, I don't know. And what happens, one of the things that happens to us as carers is that friendships, Elijah is 2-to-1 support 24/7. So I'm always, whilst I love talking, I'm always talking when you've got people in your house 24/7.
Yeah.
And what I've discovered about myself, interestingly enough, I can't do small talk either. I kind of
go deep.
I'm like, no, I can't be doing that. Anyway, so, but what transpired for me out of my miracle question was, it's like I don't consciously, intentionally invest in friendships anymore. And so what came out of that was, okay, what I need to start doing is actually making time for friends outside of the caring team that I have. Because the reality is, dare I say it, some of Elijah's team I would class as friends, some I wouldn't. So Kerry said to me, so what are you going to do then? So I went, so my friend Belinda popped into my head. So I said, I'm going to call Belinda. So then she really nails it down. Okay, so when are you going to call Belinda? So I said, tonight at 7:00. And then she went, it's like you've had a because I was like, when I was young, or when I was younger, I was in the pub and I would be chatting, or I'd be going away and seeing somebody, or I'd be inviting somebody round for a meal or for a drink. And I went, I haven't lost it, but I don't make any time for it.
Yeah. Which is hard, considering the responsibilities that you actually have to put those things into place. And I think, with the stuff that you're going through, it's very easy to get lost in that, surely, in terms of the full-time caring, the situation, and helping carers as well, and taking on their stuff and whatever else. So I think it's very easy to get lost in that.
So I set my intent. So that's the intention that I set. So when I finished, so what else do we take them through? Miracle question, and then we do a bit of guided relaxation. So at the end of that hour and a half, the other thing we do in a coaching situation is we say, get a notebook and write down what throughout the week between now and the next session. Write down what's been good, and then at the following, like week 2, which is what we're in now, or there will be opportunity to be able to share. When Kerry says what's been good, they'll be able to go look back in their notebook and say, well, this has been good and this has been good.
Yeah.
And then at the end of by the end of the 6-week program, you're in a different place to when you started.
But I think you've given them you've given people tools as well, because I think even in entrepreneurship, which you are an entrepreneur as well, you're always focusing on the next thing and not always take time to record your wins, and then it's very easy to get so consumed by the grind that you forget why you're doing what you and then when you read back the wins, you're like, oh my gosh, that was a really positive week, or that was really positive because we're doing this, or these doors are open. And I think, inherently if we don't actively engage our brains, we always default to negative, what's wrong in life, rather than what's good in life. You think about it when you're out and about, and you might meet a few people and you're talking at networking. You often talk about what's wrong.
Yeah.
They don't always go, oh, this is happening, because you almost don't want to brag. But then that inherently then is, everyone then ends up complaining and uniting around negativity. And I think for me, it's a case of us being very consciously aware of the positive things that are going on in our life, even when sometimes the world is falling apart. Be honest, find those friends where you can share, but also don't miss the wins. Don't miss the celebrations of the good things as well. And I think that gives people hope, right? Which is what the name of the charity is.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So, Kaddy, in terms of now, what would you because obviously you've been through so many different crazy scenarios and things. Would you say the faith is the thing that undergirds or keeps you going? Do you think, or what would you say? Because you talked about being in the church and that sort of, is that the thing that keeps you going?
I think it's a combination of mindset. Our brains, and this is why it's so important to be educated about how our brains work, because it's our mindset that determines where we're going.
Yeah.
So I am where I am because I said, right, I'm going to set my intention to start an organisation. In terms of building that organisation, I have to self-invest.
Yeah.
Be coaching or mentoring or, going on a podcast course, coaching course, or even going on podcasts, because when you become familiar, and because one of my visions is to be go on more podcasts as a guest.
Yeah.
I then went, okay, if I'm going to go on, if that's one of my goals, then I need to start listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
More, so I can become familiar in how people communicate, when they're on a podcast.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think so for me, I set my intention to be a career woman. I set my intention to care for carers. I set my intention to, I set my intention now, for example, to make more, to block out time so that I can see friends. So this friend that I spoke to last week, for example, haven't really spoken to her for 10 plus years, and we spent nearly an hour on the phone.
Yeah.
So it's kind of setting that, it's kind of setting the intention to do. It's like my intention is actually to go back to church at one point, because I know that although I still have a relationship with God, it's not as I don't set time aside for Him.
Yeah.
as such. Well, no, I don't. It's the reality. But I know that, you know, like any relationship, if you don't set time aside to kind of spend quality time with that person or God, you know, then you haven't got, you know, it affects the quality of your relationship, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think for me, the whole mindset thing and the whole, you've got this inherent purpose. And I think you are on a journey, and the journey that you're on for me has been, it's a crazy journey, but I do believe you've got a responsibility to tell that story to more and more people.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you're going on podcasts and you're putting yourself out there, you know, I think are all great steps to giving people hope. And I think you may call your charity Elijah's Hope, but I think Kaddy brings a lot of hope to people by the life that she's living, the intentions that you're making. And I think for me, Kaddy, it's been a privilege to get to know you. How do we get in touch with you?
So you can find me on Facebook, Carers Collective. You can find me on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we are on LinkedIn. Just to reach out, DM you and connect you. We will put information in the show notes so people can get in contact with you. But thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Pleasure. Thank you.
Please watch my dad on Purpose People podcast and like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.